2013 actually burnt us out. We lost everything to do with the business. The only thing I walked out with was a mobile phone. The office was a separate building, but the house survived. We had to replace all the outside cladding, but the house survived and worked as it should.
Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your questions answered and contribute to the community dialogue. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our weekly Passive House Accelerator live webinars. You can also check out our Reimagine Buildings YouTube channel for some great inspiration for both building new or renovating. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast. Welcome back to the Passive House podcast. I'm Matthew Cutler-Welsh, coming to you from a very wet Auckland.
I'm Zach Semke, coming to you from a beautiful sunny Seattle on the day after. The day after summer solstice for us here.
Yes. Yeah. Shortest day for us yesterday, I think, longest night. And it definitely showed it's very dark. I know it's dark if I go out in the morning and I come back and I still have to put the lights on my bike on the way home again. But yeah, hopefully that will start to change now. The nights will start to get a bit shorter, but yeah, it's been pretty wet here again. It's been a very, very wet year in New Zealand in general, in certain parts of it. But what's been exciting this week is big trade show, in building industry trade show, which hasn't run for a couple of years. It was back, and I wouldn't say it's bigger than ever, but it I think a lot of people appreciated being back in physical space together and reconnecting and just kind of seeing what's happening out there. And there are different things. I noticed in that time there's a lot more options around insulation. There's a lot more talk about airtightness. There's a lot more talk about ventilation, which I actually did a presentation on. So that's encouraging, just seeing what's going on out there. The other really exciting thing in this part of the world, I was lucky enough to go yesterday to a open day for a project known here as Beta Ventura, which sounds a bit like a character from Star Wars, but it's actually the intersection of two roads in the suburb of Auckland, Mangere, and it's I think it will be the first social housing project in New Zealand to be certified as Passive House. So 18 social housing units, and very, very impressive effort by all those involved. And so quite a big day. I think a lot of people don't necessarily know how big of an accomplishment that is. I mean, certainly people that worked on that and people have been involved in similar projects know how much work is involved in doing that. But pretty significant step in Passive House in New Zealand. So very, very exciting.
That's a really big deal that, in the US we call social housing affordable housing, sometimes subsidized housing. But the role that the first affordable housing project played here in kind of unleashing this whole wave of other building developments was really profound. So and now you that's where it's at, is affordable housing or multifamily housing in general. I mean, it's just really leading the way. So it's cool that proof of concept can be really powerful, and it's so cool to see social housing providers being leading the way. I mean, these affordable housing providers have led the way in housing in many different ways for a long time, and so this is just part of a tradition of taking the next step and making housing that's great for the people who live in the houses, which is ultimately the mission of these organizations who are involved in social housing. So very cool.
Yeah. I mean, this is one step up from just affordable housing. This is state-owned housing. So it's housing that is provided for people who can't afford, and that there's various there's a spectrum of support, right from essentially it's provided for completely through to partially subsidised. And yeah, there were lots of comments yesterday from all the architects and builders and other people involved in this project commenting half jokingly that because of the lack of affordable housing and unaffordability of Auckland, that some of these houses are probably better quality than what a lot of us will ever own in our own lives. Not in terms of being luxury. They're certainly not luxury. I mean, they're really nice. They're nicely finished, and but they're airtight. I mean, they're passive house. They have ventilation. They're quiet, even though they're on a pretty close to the airport. They're on relatively close to a main road, but they're just really, really comfortable places to be. So very, very cool. Anyway,
you mentioned Open Days, and of course this will air after Open Days is over. But Open Days, the International Passive House Open Days, is happening over the next few days. So there are going to be a lot of opportunities for people to experience passive house firsthand.
Absolutely. Yeah, and this part of the world, this middle of the year, is such a great time to have Open Days because it's cold.
Right.
And you can walk inside a passive house and just appreciate it immediately.
Yeah. And for those who are like, oh wait, I missed it, there's going to be another Open Days in November. So there's more on the way. I think it's a great idea to be doing it twice a year. That makes sense for being able to experience it in the summer and in the winter, and then also both hemispheres. So
yeah, very cool. All right. Well, I caught up with a builder recently in Australia after hearing him on a panel during the Thrive conference in Sydney earlier this year. And I always feel like builders are a bit of a highlight for at conferences because they tend to be the most nervous about speaking, but also tend to be very honest and open about their experience. And it's often a delight to hear them talk about very genuinely about their experience of working sometimes on their first passive house project and how that goes, and then their enthusiasm for it continuing beyond that. And Joe Mercieca is one of them. I'm going to talk about him in a moment, but before we do that, let's have a quick shout out to our supporters.
Absolutely. So big thank you to our founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxt Ingwe Architects, Glavel, Minutair, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, Rockwell North America, Stocorp, and Zola Windows. Thanks to our champion sponsors, Bewizo, Gradient, Icon Windows and Doors, Intelligent Membranes, PH Air Seal, Proseco, and Source 2050. And a big thank you to our stakeholder partner, NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority.
Awesome. So Joe Mercieca is a builder with over 30 years of experience building commercial and residential buildings in Australia. He's near the Blue Mountains, which is an amazing part of the world, as he describes in this interview. And his company now is Blue Eco Homes, and he's been involved in working his way up, discovering passive house, and then building a passive house and training his small team and his apprentices in doing airtight design, airtight building, and high quality energy efficient building as well. So I hope you enjoy this. It's my chat with Joe. Let's start out by giving people a bit of an idea of where you are in the world. What part of Australia are you from?
So we're currently in the Blue Mountains, the lovely Blue Mountains. Been up here for about 33 years. Originally from the lowlands, around Parramatta Way. But my origins are from. I was born in Malta. Mum and Dad immigrated here some 50-something years ago. So yeah.
So Blue Mountains, you get pretty cold winters up that way.
Oh look, it's. I wouldn't say it does get cold, but it's not as, we don't get snow in this where we are, but, half an hour up the road, they, occasionally get snow. But we get a good. We're in a not too bad temperature here, temperate climate.
And also pretty warm in summer.
Yeah, we get across of all hot and cold.
Had you been affected by bushfires the last couple of years?
Twice. So we've been through three bushfires, but the 2013 actually burnt us out. We lost all our everything to do with the business. The only thing I walked out with was a mobile phone, and the house, because we were working from home. The office was a separate building, but the house survived. We had to replace all the outside cladding, but the house survived and worked as it should. But we lost anything to do with our business that went up in flames. Wow. Due to one of our trucks caught fire and actually rolled into the building on fire. So the old smoking wagon, set it all ablaze, and it was pretty hard times after that, but we got there.
Yeah, that's quite a thing to recover from. And then, but did you get affected by floods last year?
Yeah, well, a number of our projects we actually couldn't get to. One of our projects for months on end, but we and a number of times throughout that including COVID. So it was we sort of get up here in the mountains. Even though we're high, we get affected by a lot of things.
Yeah, fire and flood. It's
well, see, the floods we get a lot of rain, we get a lot of water. We don't actually. It does flood, but we're more. Our worst thing is all the landslides that we have. So it cuts off access.
I'm probably painting a bit of a bleak picture here for international listeners, but it's a beautiful part of the world. I mean, it's a fabulous, stunning location.
I wouldn't live anywhere else. Everybody's asked us why. We've been through 3 bushfires, but I would. It sort of makes me stronger. It's not a charm, but it's part of living up here. You just said it's just really unfortunate.
How long's the drive down to Sydney?
Oh, down to Sydney, depending on the time you go, but probably an hour and a half.
Yeah,
so it's not too bad.
Yeah,
about an hour and 20 on the train.
So your company Blue Eco, but that's kind of your latest iteration. Going back, how did you get into building in the first place?
Well, okay. So Dad migrated from Malta with Mum and 3 boys. I was about 7. Dad's always been a handyman. He was a plumber over in Malta, but just did everything over here. So I was with Dad most of the time, just doing work. I remember building kitchens in our lounge room for people. Fencing subdivisions, extensions, all sorts of things. And that was like Dad's second job. So I was always with him, and he was very resourceful at making things. I remember asking him that I wanted to buy a cricket bat, and first thing he asked is, he said, "What's cricket?" So he asked me to bring one home, and
not the national sport of Malta.
No, obviously no. I think the national sport's something to do with a round ball.
Yeah.
So I brought a cricket bat home, and that night he went into the workshop and built one out of a piece of Oregon for me. It was, had no spring in it. It was just a solid chunk of wood. But I was pretty proud of it. Took it to school. It was. Awesome. I got a lot of ribbing out of it. But when they got to use it, they actually quite liked it. But but Dad was very resourceful. So I spent a lot of time from him and learnt a lot. And even as far as sustainability, he was always collecting water and drums up the side of the laundry and all that sort of stuff. So I think that was the start off of this whole sustainability thing. And then I joined Scouts, and we spent a lot of time back at Mudgee, and there was a hippie commune, and I was always down there with them, just learning about the way they build things. They used to build these awesome houses out of nothing.
Right. Yeah.
So that was another sort of a kicker to why sustainability. We love the Blue Mountains because we spent a lot of time up here in our youth through Scouts. So we moved up here, and then I was working at a commercial company as an apprentice carpenter, and then progressed through to a site manager.
Yeah.
I then decided to leave that after 25 years of working for them and start my own thing. So strapped on the nail bag again and kicked off my own building company, which at that time I was on my own. Then I hired another carpenter and then an apprentice, and as it built up, and then the local sort of community sort of loved what I was doing, and as far as sustainability and trying to push that envelope all the time. And they said I should rebrand, and they helped me come up with Blue Eco Homes, and it was, sort of all went forward from there. So we've always been doing sustainability, just in different forms.
What was that like, putting the tool belt back on and getting back into it after you become a project manager for a while there?
Well, the tool belt's still fitted, so that was a good thing.
Yeah, that's a good start.
But no, look, it was the first day. I remember after having a desk job and sort of giving instructions to other people. First day on my own, I was under a house with a jackhammer chopping out sandstone for some piers for an extension, and I sort of asked myself, what have I done? But from then on, it was just, that was the first day, and it was just, I just loved being back on the tools.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a young family, so, it was great because I could spend, they spent a lot of time on the building sites with me as well.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
They were different days then, but yeah, it was great.
When you were getting into that, and you mentioned about promoting sustainability, what at that time did sustainability mean for you?
Well, at that time, sustainability meant for us was to build better performing houses with what was available. This is probably 20 years ago. And water efficiency was sort of on the cusp of sort of getting recognised. We know water tanks. I remember when I first wanted to put a water tank in with a house 32 years ago, I had council wanting to report me because I was there. They didn't want me to put the water tank on because their reasoning was I was stealing water from Sydney Water.
Right.
So, and I said, well, you better find a cell and lock me up because I'm putting one in anyway.
Yeah.
So, so things have changed, but yeah, water resources, solar PV was only just coming in then, and it was very expensive. So we then decided to, we had a young family. We were living in a good home, which we built out, was our first home. But the kids were still, had a lot of asthma and things. So we sort of said, let's look at all this. And Marilise, my wife, being a nurse, sort of we were concerned. So we started to design what we thought then was a sustainable home, and try and push that envelope. I had architects telling me that I was silly for doing it. It wasn't going to work. No one was going to want this. But anyway, that probably drove me a bit harder. I've got a pretty stubborn head. We got there and built the sustainable homes, moved into it, won a fair few industry awards, MBA, HIA awards over it, got recognised. But the kids' health actually improved and their asthma pretty well disappeared.
And what was that sort of extra insulation or
just the comfort of the home, but also there wasn't as much it was a healthier indoor air, plus less mold and everything else that was associated with housing stock at that time.
Did you do anything? Did you do anything specific for ventilation or?
It was just cross ventilation. So we, at that time we put in double glazing, but we also put in louvers which weren't double glazed. but we sort of worked out the heat losses and all that, and we decided to go with them because we were going to get better cross ventilation, and that's what we were sort of pretty well after.
Yeah.
Just better air quality, better built home, better thermal. So we weren't getting the hot and the colds as you would in normal current code compliant homes.
Yeah. Did you have a lot of thermal mass? Was it sort of heavy exposed floor?
Yeah, so the floor was a concrete floor.
Yeah.
With a lot of thermal performance out of that. We worked out all the different floor systems. The concrete floor was a more expensive way to go, but we worked out the long-term gains on that, and it worked out a much cheaper, and what it made the house perform like was worth doing.
That wouldn't have been an easy process back then to get someone to be able to do that calculations and to work out the energy performance, not in a reliable way. Were there people available that could do that for you?
It was harder, but I did find a fellow who was recommended to us, asking a lot of questions, that was working with Accurate. Which was good, and we sort of modelled the house through the Accurate system, and we ended up with a 7.2 stars at that time. So that was about 15. That would have been about 15 years ago. Yeah. So which we were pretty proud of, but we pushed to get that 7.2 stars. We were doing just silly little things just to improve it that little bit more. Yeah. But 7.2, we were pretty happy with 7.2 stars. We found the system was a little bit flawed, because after we released the home, and sort of got more public as to what we were doing and what we had done, that we had a number of quite major building companies approach us and saying, "How did you do it and what did you do?" And I actually invited them in and we had a chat. But once we spent a couple of hours sort of talking to one of these building companies, I sort of said, "Well, I've told you everything that I know. I'd like some info from you and what he is trying to achieve." And they said, "Oh, well, we've got a 10-star home designed." And I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Wow, that's pretty cool." And I said, "What he is doing?" And they listed a number of items, and I said, "That's awesome." I said, "It makes me feel really good, because if you're going to do 10 stars with only doing what you're doing, this must be about a 15-star. And they sort of shook their head and said that, it doesn't exist. And I said, "No, I know it doesn't, but I don't know how you achieve 10 stars with what you try to do." So that's when I sort of realised that the system was a little bit flawed. So I'm not sure how they achieved the 10-star home, and whether they did. I don't think that company exists anymore, but they were quite a major project builder. Anyway, we proceeded to do what to play in our own backyard and keep doing what we were doing. And then we were doing the sustainability, but there was always something missing with sustainability and what we were building and how we were building it. And then I actually sort of looked at the current building stock and the problems, and Marilise and I then jumped on the internet and researched it, and everything kept pushing us back to passive house. And that was all the info from Germany, not in Australia. So we researched that for quite a number of years, and then we decided to let's build one.
So your introduction to passive house was you finding it and finding information from Germany?
Basically, yeah. So it wasn't something that we hadn't heard of it, and didn't even know that it had actually existed at that time in Australia. Didn't even know the Passive House Association existed in Australia. Everything that we asked the internet, it all led us back to Germany. So with mould, with low energy homes, insulation, everything just kept going back to passive house in Germany. So then I sort of we bought a block of land and we pushed the envelope in wanting to do that because we're pretty silly. We sort of look for the most hardest tasks. So we wanted to build a flame zone passive house. So we bought a block of land. We designed our house. Didn't tell our architect at that stage about passive house because we didn't know what we were actually in for.
Right.
And she didn't really understand it anyway. So and we weren't sure how hard it was going to be to introduce something new to the area.
What was around? Like, were there options available by that stage for airtightness, vapor control? There was systems available.
ProClimate were around, and they were an awesome help. Once we started digging into it, and we designed the house, and then said, let's convert this into a passive house. We did all that, did all the research, then found people like ProClimate, which were awesome help.
Right.
There was others in the industry. We found supplies for the Brink HRV system that was put in. We didn't really know a lot about all this stuff. It was all just information that we had and just stuff we'd learnt.
Yeah.
And then Marilise one day said, there's a Passive House Association in Australia. And I said, no. I said, good. So we then looked at that, and then we looked at there was some training. So I went and done some training down at Victoria. So which gave me a whole sort of other, a lot more information, and knowing that there was a community here that was doing this.
Yeah.
So we just proceeded. We built the house, launched it. The launch went really well accepted in the community and abroad. And that's where we are. That's where we're at now.
So it sounds like you had a pretty good crack at it before you had done the training and sort of joined the rest of the community.
Yeah. So, but that's sort of, Marilise and I sort of, Marilise shakes her head a lot because I come up with these ideas, and here we go again. And even my team, once we get something right and it's working, and I'll come back and say we've got to improve it or we've got to change it. Yeah. So we're always on the improve.
How would you describe the market where you are now? What you say that people liked what they saw. What's the potential, and what are people saying now?
Oh, look, the potential is a lot more people know about Passive House. The education around that has been awesome. Mm-hmm. So, where most of our inquiries probably 2 years ago were people asking us they wanted to build a sustainable home. Now they're actually ringing saying we want to build a passive house. So the education is getting there. We can always do with more, but it's getting there. A lot of people want it. I think at the moment, with the way the whole industry and economy is going, it's a bit out of people's probably cost to reach, but there are ways of doing it to bring some of those costs down. Mm-hmm. And I think the more people that are building passive houses, the more things will come down as well. But we are in a pretty hard sort of economic state at the moment with the industry.
What do you tell people when they ask about cost?
What do I tell them? Well, I tell them that it's going to be a bit more expensive than a custom-built home. But basically, I explain to them the benefits. And number one benefit that I know with Passive House is the health benefits that you get out of it. The comfort and the low energy costs are secondary to your health. Without health, you've got nothing. So, but look,
are you finding now that people are coming to you because of a reputation you have, or are you having to convince people to go down the passive house path?
Probably a bit both, I suppose. Everybody that comes to us, normally with our people that come to us, they've already researched Passive House and they've already researched ourselves. So, I highly, work on my reputation. That's, it's a key part of our business.
Yep.
So a lot of people come to us due to reputation, and then they already know Passive House, and a lot of times I think they're just testing us to see what we say from what they know.
Right.
So it's usually quite a good conversation.
Yeah, I'm sure you impress them if they're testing you. Tell us about the Sapphire.
Well, the Sapphire, like I said, that was our sort of a prototype Passive House. That was pushing ourselves to do that. One of my third-year apprentices, and I pushed myself and also pushed the team. I actually put him in charge of the Passive House.
Yeah.
Again, he knew just as much as I did, which was not much about Passive House. So we the whole team learned together. Obviously there was a lot of us sort of helping him and supervising. It wasn't just here's the drawings, see you later.
Yeah.
We were there, all day, every day with him and all that. But we sort of put him in charge. But we all done well. We all learnt a lot. And again, we came out of that. The market took that well. We set up the home as a fully livable house as well. We had people staying in it for weeks on end to try it. We had a lot of architects stay at it. We had a lot of clients. We had other people that did podcasts and influencers that stayed at it. We've had developers stay at it. We had the first people that actually stayed on it was some Aboriginal elders, which hunted us down and saying that this is the type of housing that we want. And it was quite funny because they rocked up in the afternoon. We all had a few laughs and a few, just general chit chat.
Yeah.
And then the two of them, I showed them around how the house worked. They were going to stay in it for a couple of nights. And one of the elders, he said to me, he says, Joe, one problem. He says, I've never slept with a closed window. And I said, well, the house will work properly, will work better with a closed window. But if you feel the need to open a window, I said, just open a window. And they stayed there the night, him and his uncle. And the next morning I sort of went there, greeted him at the door, and I got greeted with the biggest smile you'd ever seen, and his hands up in the air waving, saying, he says, I had a great night's sleep. I slept with the window closed. He says, I don't know what magic you've done, he says, but it was fantastic. So, they said, this is the kind of housing that we would love. So it's been an awesome sort of experience, just teaching people, learning about it, meeting, and the people that we've met are just fantastic.
It must be amazing to have something like that you can use in that way and say, come and don't just come and visit, but come and stay the night. Come and feel. Yeah, we were finding it was working. It was working magnificently. Yeah.
What sort of killed it for us was COVID, like it did with a lot of things.
Right.
The house sat there for about 12 months with no one in it.
Right.
It was a bit of a disappointment to us because it was a beautiful home and it worked well and everybody loved being there, and it was just this lovely home and a big asset for us, running a small family business, sitting there, not being used, and we were always getting offers with people that stayed there to buy it off us.
Right.
So we, had a great offer put to us, and we sort of said, we'll take it because we couldn't do anything with it at that stage.
Yeah.
And things were sort of just slowly starting to open up, but no one really knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
A great couple live in it. It's a family home. They moved to the Blue Mountains to be closer to their grandchildren and family. They absolutely love it, and we're really happy because the home's being loved like it should be.
Yeah. The thing I really like about it is it looks like a house. It looks like an Australian house that you drive by without thinking twice. It's a 230 square meters, got an inbuilt double garage, 4 bedrooms. It ticks all the boxes that any real estate would love to have as a listing. But it's a passive house, and I think doing that is great for Australia, because it almost does passive house by stealth, in that it produces something that is very, I wouldn't say ordinary looking. It's a beautiful, it's a good looking, standard looking home, but obviously performs exceedingly well.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to achieve. We're sort of trying to achieve, bringing it to the broader market. Not quite project home style, but a high performing house with a little bit of class that everybody seemed to love.
I think it's great.
We also learned a lot. Oh, it's great. It worked really well. We are going to do it again. We'll do it a little bit different again this time, probably a little bit better as well. But from building that first house, we learnt a lot ourselves as a business. And then we also said we could do this better and quicker. So we then started developing our prefab system, which we're now using for most of our homes.
Awesome. Where do you see things going? Where would you like to be in say, the next 5 years?
Next 5 years? Look, I'll be probably getting close to retirement, but anyway, we'll see what happens there as well. But look, next 5 years, I think that passive house is just on the up and up. Everybody's talking about it. Good thing is, governments and ministers are now starting to talk about it. We've still got a long way to go, but the good thing is everyone is talking about it.
Yeah.
We just got to now, yes, talk about it, but actually do more of it. We find that, these homes are basically future-proofing the housing industry.
Yeah.
And the occupants that live in it. But the whole state of affairs is everybody still looks at it as, it's only a 4-bedroom house, but it costs that little bit more to build, which is, I believe is the wrong way to look at it. It's future-proofing it. The house is a long-term benefits. The benefits outweigh the initial costs, but also the house pays itself back in no time at all. We have now through COVID, we sort of built a passive house for ourselves, which is a multi-generational passive house. So it's basically 3 houses in one. It's 400 and something square metres of homes, 3 houses, basically 3 homes, high number of people in and out. And it's costing us near nothing for electricity to keep it at 20 degrees pretty well all year round. The average temperature we've been measuring it is 20.5, I think it is. No, sorry, it's 22.5 is the average. So it's within the passive house specs, but it's quite comfortable. I'm sitting in my lounge room now, sitting at 20 degrees, and we've got no air conditioning on. So they are houses of the future. They really are.
I think that two things there. I think that obviously prefab is going to really help out, but I really like that that typology, that multi-generation. We don't have enough of that in this part of the world, in Australia and New Zealand. We're not very good at doing that from a consenting point of view, but also just real estate. But I think there's a huge opportunity for all sorts of benefits for having being able to have grandkids and grandparents live under the same roof.
100%. It's the Europeans and have been doing it for hundreds of years. We don't seem to do that here in Australia, but I think it's a great thing. With general land and house costs and everything else, when you can build, basically 3 houses, everybody's got their own space. Everybody comes together when they want to. It's awesome. Well, it's proved that, we also built this house for accessibility, and it's it's paid itself off just in the last week because I can run around the house on all 3 levels with my scooter.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's really working.
Awesome. Hey, well, great work, Joe. I think it's fantastic to have people like yourself with all your experience in the industry, but now doing some really great things, pushing the boundaries and doing what you're doing. So keep it up, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, and I hope it's been a pleasure, and go Passive House.
I look forward to coming to visit in the Blue Mountains.
Anytime, mate. Our door's always open to anybody that's interested. So,
Nice.
Not a problem.
And that was Joe, who's the founder and director of Blue Eco Homes in the Blue Mountains in Australia. What do you think, Zach?
It was great. I loved listening to this journey that he was going through, and then talking about the 7.2 stars and the 10 stars and the 15 stars, and then
Yeah.
we need this. What's going on? And then that leading to this discovery of Passive House. After many years of doing, being focused on healthy buildings, and I guess that's another piece that really stood out, was just how important health was, both to him personally for the health of his kids, but also in terms of the way that he talks about the work they're doing now with clients.
Yeah. I mean, we've heard that from a number of interviewees, guests on the show, that they sort of have this idea that they want to do something sustainable, but don't really know what that is or how to define it. Have a good crack at it, and then even play around with passive solar concepts. There's a lot of that sort of played around with, and in Australia there's things like water sensitive design and having big rainwater tanks and solar panels, but people just not really always thinking that there's something a bit more, there's something missing, and then that's often when they discover or hear about Passive House, and suddenly the penny drops. And Joe's definitely in that category of he's been pursuing sustainable design, sustainable building for much of his career, but you can see that when he found out about Passive House, it just helped crystallize that into something tangible that he was able to produce. We sort of touched on at the end there about the show home, the Sapphire.
Yeah.
And I'll put a link to there's a very simple floor plan of that you can have a look at, which shows you that it is just a very ordinary, nice looking home. And I think that's great, because it doesn't stand out like a square box with small windows at all. It looks like a modern Australian home. And I think that's testament to the designer and also to Joe and his team, and just having that vision of putting something that doesn't look out of place but feels amazing when people experience it. And I love that idea of getting people to spend the night there and going and visiting them in the morning and seeing how well they've slept in this Passive House.
Yeah, no, that was a great story, and the anecdote around the sleeping with the windows open, it touched on a couple things. One is the really common perception that people have, or misperception that people have, that you can't open the windows in a Passive House, which of course we all know is not true, or that if you do open the windows, you're somehow messing things up or something. And so the experience of being at the Sapphire House helps people understand that that's not the case. That windows, you can open the windows anytime, but also the fact that the visitor didn't need to do it. Could sleep very well with the window closed, and that's because they're getting a bunch of oxygen through the ventilation system. That's why we want the windows open.
That's right. When people say, like,
it's not stuffy.
My parents like that. It's like, I've got to have the window open, but it's like, but why is that? Why do you have that belief that you have to have the windows open? Not to minimize that, because it's a real desire. In some cases, a real fear. People feel claustrophobic if they're closed in, but often it's just that experience of not having enough oxygen.
Yeah, definitely. this theme of health and communicating about the health benefits of these better buildings that we're doing with Passive House also came up today. We had a really great presentation at the Passive House Accelerator Live about a project in here. I'll come up with the name of it, but it's a new multifamily building in the Upper West Side. It's called Charlotte of the Upper West Side. This beautiful, really high end project in New York, and Passive House ended up becoming really important to this project because the lower heating and cooling load of this building meant that it required much less mechanical equipment on the roof, which opened up the roof to become terraces. And that was some, and so there are these beautiful terraces on the top of this building that are being sold as part of these units on the upper floor. And so Passive House actually wasn't part of the original idea for the developer, but became part of it because of that. But then as they were learning more about Passive House and learning about the health benefits, they actually ended up folding all of this into the marketing of this high-end condominium project, but in a very smart way. And it's a pull down on the website called Technology and Wellness. And it just goes, and then there are these really cool, very cute is not the right word. They're very compelling, like hand drawing illustrations and animated illustrations of the different principles of Passive House, but you're not really, it's more the technology behind it all. But it's all about health. It's all about health. And health is just, the indoor air quality is just so top of mind for all of us now, whether it be COVID or wildfire smoke or bushfires, as we were hearing about in this interview.
So just on that, people should go and check out those videos. If they missed that live, go and check those out on Passive House Accelerator.
Oh yeah, right. So you mean the presentation that just happened? We also have a wildfire smoke video. I can also, as long as we're talking about bushfires, I was also really struck by how stubborn and like he was just so clear that they're not moving. Like they're going to stay there, and he's thinking about future proofing of buildings with Passive House, but he's also thinking about building in a fire zone and really like long-term resilience. And we're gonna stick it out, which I thought was really fun to hear and listen to.
Yeah, you do tend to find that, I guess, people even in floodplain areas sometimes. Bushfire areas. People were like, no, this is our home.
Right.
And there are ways of managing that, I think, particularly around fire locations, both from a wider policy perspective, but also at an individual household level. There are ways of designing in resilience, and then maintenance and looking after the property they're fairly well known strategies for that, particularly in those bush areas or where the urban area borders bushland in Australia. It is a stunning part of the world, and you're still not that far from the main city when you want to go down to the city. So yeah, I can definitely see the appeal. Awesome. All right. We've got a few more of those. That was another result of our time at Thrive, of the Australian Passive House Association. Great event that they held in Sydney earlier this year. And I'm still working through the list of contacts that I made, and great speakers there. So I hope to bring you more guests from that conference and from around Australia and New Zealand.
Perfect.
All right. What have we got coming up, Zach?
Well, we have at the Passive House Accelerator Live, the next episode of that show is Construction Tech. It's on Wednesday, June 28th, so Thursday, June 29th for you. And we are joined by Jessica Morrissey and Chris Burke of NEI. They're a contractor based in Massachusetts. And we were talking about multifamily going up like crazy. They're at the leading edge of building a lot of these multifamily passive house projects. So the title of the talk is Passive House Multifamily, Best Practices and Lessons Learned. And then we are actually taking the next week off. That's July 4th weekend for us in the United States, or July 4th week for us in the United States. So we're going to take that July 5th program off, and then we'll be back on, I guess that would be July 12th for a next gen episode of the show. And there's other stuff going on in the community that we will link to in the show notes.
Nice. And a quick shout out for all those videos on YouTube. I'm hearing them mentioned here, so they're definitely gaining traction and people taking notice of those.
You mean the Reimagine, the new channel,
Reimagine
Buildings? All right.
I had some very good feedback about the intro to Passive House video.
Oh, awesome.
And I see it pop up on other people's websites, which is, I think,
perfect.
Exactly how it is intended to be used as a resource for if you're sort of in the choir and know all about Passive House, but you want to help tell other people in a succinct way what it's all about. That is a great thing to just embed into your website or share to help other people who are just starting to hear about Passive House to get up to speed with what it is, what the benefits are.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll make sure to include a link to the channel too.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. We'll be back again next week or sometime soon with another episode on the Passive House podcast.